awake. I'm awake. Let's see here. All right, what are we doing today? Are you a fan of bullet hell games? Is that what this is? Because I thought that this was a bullet hell game. No? Store page. Let's look at the genre. Bullet hell. Yeah, it's a fucking bullet hell. Look, these are really easy to play while streaming, okay? I actually fucking hate them. I fucking hate these things, dude. Here, let's do it like this. Get the Night Witch. Let's see. This isn't even a fucking bullet hell game. Let's look at popular bullet hell games. Yeah, I feel like if I play a Metroidvania, it's going to take too much concentration than, you know, just regular, just running around in a circle, trying not to get hit, you know? Everyone's told me to get Brotato. Well, that one looks interesting. Oh, well. We still have 2 more achievements to unlock on this one. All right. We have some drama to go over. But we also have a bunch of regular just... Let's start off with something ultra pedestrian. All right. Ultra pedestrian. Boogie 2988. And then once I'm fully awake, we can actually start doing real content, huh? Oh.
This is a topic that I've talked about on the podcast occasionally and sometimes on stream, but overall I feel the entire lore and situation around Boogie 2988 over the last like 5 or 6 years has just been incredibly sad. But there was a documentary just released about him, which had Boogie's stamp of approval, his blessing. A documentary filmmaker by the name of Mike Klum spent the better part of like 9 months filming Boogie and going over cataloging his life. I've watched a lot of documentaries throughout my 29 years on this space rock, and I feel like until the moon falls out of orbit crashing into the Earth, just as Roland Emmerich predicted in the classic Moonfall movie, I feel like this will remain one of the most perplexing documentaries I've ever watched, because I don't know why Boogie would agree to it. It makes him look so bad.
I took women on vacations, and I took them out to fancy dinners, and I took them to like Disneyland and shit.
I'm not going to show you all the main components of the documentary, I just want to focus on...
What really blows my mind, I watched about like 3 or 4 minutes of this earlier. What really blows my mind is that Boogie had $20,000 to spend on sex workers. Like, I don't know if that was like 2 a year and they were really high class ones, or if it was like incessant. But $200K is a fucking lot of money, and even for a YouTuber, 200,000 seems like a lot of money.
On 2 core ones here. If you're all interested in the story of Boogie 2988, I highly encourage you watch the whole documentary here. It's probably one of the most honest looks at anyone I've ever seen. Boogie is just an open and honest book here that's a little bit hard to read from because it is pretty eye-opening stuff. But anyway, his fall from grace on the internet is an extremely well-cataloged downfall. from the repulsive, awful things he said in the past to his manipulative tendencies and his behavior, all of it has led to Boogie going from a well-respected content creator to basically a joke, or someone that's looked at in disgust for his behavior. So for those that don't know, Boogie...
I remember when I first started watching YouTube, besides like, Family Guy clips and shit like that, back in the good old days of like probably late 2015, early 2016, when I actually started like watching people because they were YouTubers and not because it was just there, right? I watched a lot of the Game Grumps. I watched a lot of fucking Philip DeFranco, right? I got exposed to what do you call it? The content cop shit, It's a stretch to say Boogie was ever well respected. Well, that was the impression that I got watching some of his stuff back in the day during like the drama. There was like the drama wars with all the content cop shit, and what else? There was like the content cops that he commented on, and I think the Jake Paul brothers. And it felt like people like went to him because he was like seen as like the kind uncle, of YouTube, right? He would just be like, well, I understand where everyone's coming from on this. However, and he just had like these, super chill. He was more well known for his Francis character. Yeah, that was before my time. All right. You remember Greek God X? He averaged now something like 500 viewers. It's been like that a long time. Well, I don't know what he was at his peak. The only stuff that I ever saw from Greek God X was the Destiny of Destinies or whatever the fuck, where they were just trading short and fat jokes back and forth, which was pretty good. That they had a good rapport before he went completely off the deep end and went like anti-vaxxer health bro. Like that was his downfall, right? Was the health shit when he stopped being fat, or was there a more gradual decline than that?
Is an OG YouTuber who was absolutely at the top of the game for a long time. He won a fucking award for being a nice guy in the gaming community, basically. They used to call him the Mr. Rogers of the internet. But then, Twitter and Reddit happened, and Boogie had this inability to shut up. He would constantly publicize the most foul opinions that he had about situations. He would always talk about the saddest and most depressing aspects of his life because it felt like he was addicted to being viewed as a victim. It felt like he loved the feeling of people viewing him as pathetic. And it's something I know he's touched on in the past that even has a level of self-awareness where he also recognizes how detrimental it's all been to his career and just downright self-destructive. But he just can't stop himself from just posting on Twitter every single private thing that should never be publicized to strangers because he seems to just be enamored
like
with that
what?
attention that he gets when he is viewed as...
The only thing that I know about Boogie is that he got into a fight with some other guy, and the guy showed up to his house, and Boogie walked out with like a fucking 1850s revolver pointed at the guy, and that he had a divorce with his wife. That's literally basically all I know about the guy, in terms of like questionably bad things that he's done. But like other than that, I've just heard that he's a lol cow. I haven't heard much else about like what he's done, except for I guess now the fact that he has spent well over my entire lifetime earnings on hookers. But like Jesus Christ, I just don't know.
Like someone to feel sympathy for at all times. And it's just a really weird and sad set of circumstances. However, after watching the documentary, I'm starting to believe he's just not a good person. I was always under the impression that very deep down is a caring individual who had a good heart and good intentions and just got a little lost and confused along the way. But after seeing this and all of the worst aspects of his life that he just proudly highlights here, I just really am starting to think he's just not a good guy. So the first thing I want to show you is his addiction to sex workers. He has spent a pretty penny on paying for sex, as well as paying for like vacations and stuff for the sex workers to accompany him, this and that. And it also gives an insight into the way he views women, which I think is a pretty repulsive perspective he has on a lot of it, at least from what he describes here. And one thing that becomes instantly recognizable is his sense of entitlement, which becomes a prevalent point throughout this entire documentary, where he believes that because he was a successful YouTuber, anything he wants, he deserves, he should get, he is entitled to it.
It's not a revelation. I like beautiful women. I like to hang out with beautiful women, fuck beautiful women. We all do. I never got to do that. The women I dated were pretty, sure. But they were like Arkansas 8s, not LA 10s. With sugaring, I got to fuck some LA 10s, and I think that's cool. So I deserve to go to Disneyland with a beautiful girl, right? I deserve to go to New York and explore.
Why would you want to pay for a hooker and take her to Disneyland? Like that's a hell of an expensive date, and usually something that you would want to do with someone that you actually fucking know in my personal opinion, I've never been to Disneyland. Okay, why the fuck would you want to go to Disneyland with a beautiful girl? I want to go to Disneyland with my girlfriend, of course, but with my fucking bros. Okay, I want to be shit faced going down the Tower of Terror.
Or Times Square was a beautiful girl, right? Like I deserve that, and I want that, and I've never had it.
Why do you deserve that? Because you filmed your 20th Francis chugging Mountain Dew while pooping his pants and putting popcorn in a microwave video? Like, what? It's such a deranged mindset that he believes he is entitled to all of these women wanting to slobber on his meat because he is a famous YouTuber. He shouldn't be settling for an Arkansas 8. No, he deserves the LA 10s. So he pays for sex workers because Boogie deserves that top shelf pussy with the pinky out. And to me, this audacity is alarming. To me, this screams that he only views women as objects to be conquered sexually. He shouldn't be settling for something that's an Arkansas 8. That's beneath him. Have they looked at his subscriber count? No. What he deserves is the LA 10s, so he gets into the sugar baby community.
She's definitely a little thicker than I necessarily would always go for, but there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a 48-year-old man. I never got to fuck a model.
Whoa, chill.
This let me fuck a couple of models. Is that wrong?
A very important lesson to learn is nobody is entitled to anything other than a knuckle sandwich if you start calling me short. I'm kidding. You'd probably still beat my ass. But
Tower of Terror is literally the only ride that I know by name that Disney does. Wait, no. They do the Pirates of the Caribbean, but I only know that was a ride because of the movie. I didn't even know that was a fucking ride. Like I've never been a Disney adult. I've never been a Disney kid. I watched Disney movies, but I didn't know shit about Spaceman and Splash Mountain. Are those branded for Disney? Like Disney World or Disneyland? I thought those were just like generic names that people would. Oh, okay. Well, never mind. I deserve 10 out of 10 pussy because I'm worth it. It sounds like one of those like cologne commercials, like, you deserve the best. You deserve power. You deserve glory. You deserve 10 out of 10 pussy. Why? Because you're worth it. Aqua di Gio. Like, that's what it fucking sounds like.
But the point is, you don't deserve anything. To speak here like you deserve these women, you are entitled to these women because of your online success, is so delusional. And speaking of delusion, him criticizing the lady for being thicker than he would normally go for is just downright ridiculous and absurd. It just really seems like with the way he speaks about women throughout the documentary, he just views them as sexual props for his own pleasure. Really, that's the most important thing when it comes to women for him. He doesn't want to be caught dead with an Arkansas 8. Instead, it's all about the LA 10s, so that way he can fuck them. And that's what he cares about most when it comes to women. That's the impression I get listening to him talk about it. Now, this portion of the video isn't necessarily just focusing on his sex worker spending. It's talking about his reckless spending in general. At the height of Boogie's career, he was making so much money. Tons and tons, oodles of doubloons. And now, fast forward to today, he is fundamentally broke. He doesn't have any money to his name left. So it's going over where all of it went, and a large chunk went to paying for sex workers, as well as like gift cards that he would give them, which is crazy. When they broke down the financial spending, $500 was allocated for gift cards, which is a weird gift to give someone, and like $1,000 for a purse. So I guess he'd give them like a purse with like a GameStop gift card in there, like, hey, go get yourself something nice, toots. Maybe a couple Pokemon card packs, huh? Yeah, maybe a new video game or two.
What? Now here's a question. I've never purchased sex before in my entire life. Are you expected to also give them gifts? Because it feels like I'm already paying you. You can buy yourself a gift. All right, that feels like now we're getting into territory where I feel like this is an unfair equation if you're having to get them gifts and pay them. But
like the whole thing is just all about his spending habits, which has left him in a financial crisis. All of which is his own fault.
Depends on the
which
situation.
He also recognizes. His entire career's.
It feels like the only situation. Like it feels like the higher class of a hooker, the more you would be expected to buy them gifts. But they're also the ones that you would have to pay the most for. So it feels like a ass backwards kind of equation, in my opinion. All right. I would never fucking pay for sex in my entire fucking life. There's no fucking way it would ever fucking happen. But if I'm paying to get my dick sucked, I'm not buying you fucking Louis Vuitton or some shit like that too. You just got your payday, okay?
Spiral into the shitter is entirely his own fault. From not being able to stop saying the most awful things you can imagine during streams, to not being able to stop himself from posting the most private things about his life online, to not being able to stop himself from spending money on collectibles, a bunch of luxury items, terrible investments in like crypto, which he lost like $600,000 in. All of it is his own fucking fault. And when he talks about himself and
listen, I don't understand like the mindset that someone who is like a famous person at one point in time has. Right? Like maybe there's some sort of psychological thing that makes you do this sort of shit. But like, man, if there was ever like if I ever like hit it fucking big time and made a fuckload of money off of streaming, right, which is never gonna happen, but like if I ever like if that ever did happen, I was making like $1 million a year or some shit like that. Let's say I'm on the low end of like the good, well-paid YouTubers, right, and I get $1 million a year, bro. There's just not that many things that I fucking want. I don't know what people spend all of their fucking money on when they get rich. It's actually mind-boggling to me because outside of like a few possessions that I own, right, I really don't have anything that's worth that much money. I don't really desire anything that's worth that much money, right? Like the most expensive thing that I have obviously is my fucking car. I would sell that shit in an instant if it meant that I never had to drive again, right? If there were like other means of transportation like a subway system, yeah, I would take the fucking public transport easy. Because I don't want to pay $300 a month for a fucking car. When it comes to computers, like I might upgrade my computer, but that's like 10 years that I've had this computer and I've only replaced 2 parts in it. So it's not like that's going to be a continual sink of money. Your desires would change after you have the cash open to you. But I don't even know what I would buy. Like, there's not anything that I desire in life, like material wise. Like, maybe I would spend like too much money on something like I could see maybe spending too much money on like travel and like doing shit like that, like actual experiences. But I don't know. Maybe no, because Boogie also was like a poor person too, right? I was about to say maybe I just have like a poor person mindset and like I would never spend the money because like all money is hyper precious to me, but you'd want to travel more and have different experiences? Sure. But like I also don't know. Yeah, I just don't know like how much that would actually impact like my day to day. Like I can't see myself wanting to travel or having the energy to travel like that much, maybe like once or twice a year. But, you know, you would spend the money on stupid things like collectibles. Bro, if I wanted to fucking spend money on collectibles, like I would. I already have all these fucking Nintendo games, okay? I never fucking play them. I enjoy having them in the back there, but I never play them, so why would I buy more? What collectibles would I fucking buy? Are you ready to stop telling people I deplatformed you yet? No, actually, I'm not. Feels like the entire point of you coming in and doing the whole switcheroo wasn't actually to make any point, because you even conceded that your point didn't make any sense about 20 seconds later, because an article in a magazine can't be an actual fucking genocide. Genocidal language does not equal like genocide. So yeah, I feel like there was a little bit of a bait there, but you know, whatever. We can talk again on a safer platform. I don't really have much of a desire to. I don't know what we would talk about. Have you ever tasted top 10 out of 10 top tier pussy? That's where you spend all of your money? Yeah. It tastes like fucking, you know, white chocolate and fucking champagne. What is the difference between 10 out of 10 pussy and like, let's say 7 out of 10 pussy? This is like a fine caviar. Like, what the fuck?
Like his health struggles and a lot of the other things that are personal to his like day-to-day life, he speaks as though it's already kaput. Andrew really summed it up best. When Boogie talks about himself, he talks about himself as if he's been dead for 30 years. When he speaks, he's speaking as if...
That you hold different standards for different groups of people and to the... Wait, hold on. The fucking heart is in the way. And are to the right of the Nuremberg trials. I don't know if it's like syphilis that's rotted your brain, or if it's all the drugs that you claim to take or anything like that. Like I don't think that there's a single person in the entire world that thinks that I am to the right of the Nuremberg trials. And I don't even know what that means. You think that I would let the Nazis get away with anything that they did? Like, what does it mean to be to the right of the Nuremberg trials?
he's already 6 feet under in the grave, and he's like communicating as a force ghost, like, man, I wish I took better care of my body. That's something he speaks about in the documentary with his girlfriend, who's 29 years younger than him, and he starts to recognize that in 10 years she's only going to be 30, and he might just be dead because of all the health problems he has from not taking care of himself. And he just speaks as though there's nothing he can do to fix it. He's just like, damn, I should have put more time into fixing my body a long time ago. You know, it's already over. When he can start now. He can still start doing that now. He can still fix his career now, work towards improving his career, but he just doesn't.
Probably not. At a certain point, like when you get a certain reputation, I don't know if there is anything that you can actually do to repair a career that's at this point where everyone's talking about how much you've spent on hookers in the past like couple of years.
Refuses to. He just speaks as though he's completely given up, which is another thing that becomes very clear in this documentary, where even though he feels a sense of entitlement, he feels as though he doesn't.
Oh wait, hold on. That was what I was going to say earlier. I would give up. Like, number one, I wouldn't know how I would spend all that money and become a broke bitch after all that time. But if I fell off, like, I feel like I would see the writing on the wall and just like stop, do something else with my life, invest that money, get like a part-time job, and just like have a lot of free time. So like with the other stuff as a oh shit, I wasn't paying attention. So I have like this ultimate cushion, but I'm still making enough to like, you know, at least pay for like 75% of my rent, and then the rest of it's just stuff that I live on for the rest of my life. I don't fucking know like exactly how you could make that work, but like you could probably still live a life of luxury just coasting off of the money that you made on YouTube before you fell off. And I feel like that's where I would be. Like at a certain point, I wouldn't want all of the negative attention that everyone's giving me, right? I would just want, you know, I would just chill out. But, you know, doesn't Andrew Tate boast how much he spends? Yeah. But he also puts his money into stuff like really expensive cars that have like resale value, whereas like most cars just do not have any resale value. I think that there are like collector cars that you can buy that actually appreciate in value rather than devalue. But he probably is a lot smarter with his money than fucking Boogie.
Doesn't have to work towards anything. He just deserves all of these women. He deserves all of this money, all because at one point he was a very successful YouTuber. It's a fucking baffling and infuriating mentality to witness in this film. Now, the next thing I want to showcase here, and the last thing that I'm going to focus on in the video, is him getting another job, because YouTube has been collapsing on him, and the documentary filmmaker suggested maybe getting another job. It's also something everyone else in the world has suggested to him, getting a real job. And so he finally decides to go through with it and do like a mock interview to see if maybe he can find a position somewhere in the working world.
Dawn.
Dawn, Boogie, or Steve.
Okay, what do you prefer to be called?
Honestly, probably Steve. Let's go with Steve.
Okay, Steve, no problem. Whatever you prefer. And so you are here today because you are seeking employment.
Yeah. I did work at a small gaming store back in...
Do you think the editor of Der Stürmer deserved the punishment he got, even though he never personally unalived anyone? Was he one of the people that was hanged at Nuremberg? Probably. If he was part of... Wasn't Stryker like one of the lead Nazis for like a good amount of time, and also contributed to the like planning elements of the final solution? So yeah. Or am I thinking of someone else?
2006, 2007. I am disabled, recognized by the state of Arkansas, but also the United States government. There's that. Now, the downside of that is I am extremely depressed, so there's some mental health issues that we bring to the table. And then physically, I am morbidly obese. I have no references, no work history, and no education. And when you Google my name, you might see rumors that I beat my ex-wife, like, and I'm also...
Do you think that... Do you think that I don't think Nazis deserved death after the shit that they did? Like, who do you think that I am? Like, I just don't know what, like, you have like a very skewed idea of who the fuck I am if you think that I don't think that the Nazis deserved to, you know, be put down after the end of World War II. Like, you would be absolutely fucking unhinged to think that about me.
Also a pedophile. Should mention I'm also a felon.
When I first saw this clip, it wasn't in the documentary. It was floated around on Twitter.
Wait, what?
I am morbidly obese. I have no references, no work history, and no education.
Get a fucking... You don't need any of those things to get like a part-time job. Like, at all. Oh, well, you'd be wrong on that, Ellen.
And when you Google my name, you might see rumors that I beat my ex-wife and I'm also a pedophile. Should mention I'm also a felon.
When I first saw this clip, it wasn't in the documentary, it was floated around on Twitter. I thought it was just part of a skit. I was blown away. I was like, damn, Boogie's got some real acting chops now. He's really been hitting the thespian troupe out there training. I was like, damn, kind of a fire, comedy sketch. No, this is real. This is authentic. This is more real than my 3-point jump shot. This is actually how he conducted himself during this interview. Now, of course, this isn't a job interview per se. It's to try and help find him work. But he goes in here and just intentionally sabotages it. This is not as though he's really taking it seriously. He's taking the piss here, if you ask me. And that becomes extremely clear because after the fact, he says that he can't just get a real job or anything. He has 4 million YouTube subscribers. A job is beneath him. So I feel as though he went in here and just intentionally wasted her time and his time. And the time of the documentary filmmakers. Because this is just, no one would do this. To go in there and say shit like this, talking about if you Googled his name, you'd find out that he has rumors that he beat his wife or that he's a pedophile.
Don't
what
Google
the fuck?
my name on. Don't Google my name. Don't Google Sondsol. Whatever you do. Anyways, I would like a job. They see the giant SS flag.
So
fucking
I think there are some avenues you could
fucking
explore. I definitely don't think it's impossible, but you have some challenges.
Yeah.
Lots of things in life are about your mindset, and you're using weight and disability. I can't.
And also, he's a pedo. That guy has lost the plot for real. Is he actually a pedophile? No, you asked me if the article was genocidal. I said no. Why? Because the context of the language was hateful, right? But without a broader context, you can't call something genocidal. In the same way that you can't call someone walking by and doing a drive-by a genocide, even though it was all black people, or a hate crime just because it was all black people. You would need broader context. Was this person trying to do a hate crime? Were they part of a gang that was going around and killing people? Were they just a psychopath that happened to be in an area that mostly had black people? There's a lot of contextual things that come around with genocide, but you don't actually care about that, just like you don't actually care about any of the issues that you pretend to talk about, right? What you like to do is you like to virtue signal on the fucking internet and then show your dick to random trans girls on the timeline. I don't know exactly why you think that I don't know why you think that it has anything to do with genocide to read one article when genocide is a very, very different thing than just hate speech. Hate speech goes into genocide. Hate speech itself is not genocidal.
And I can't. If that is the attitude that you're going to have when you approach everything, then you can't.
Yeah, demonized vermin. Do you think that Vosh's language, when he talks about Republicans being literal demons wearing skin suits, do you think that is genocidal rhetoric? No.
And you won't.
I did work in the porn industry for the better part of 7 years, so I mean...
Be real with me. Do you really think...
Please tell me that's not true.
You're using weight and disability? I can't. If that is the attitude that you're going to have when you approach everything, then you can't. And you won't.
I did work in the porn industry for the better part of 7 years, so I mean...
Be real with me. Do you really think it would be a good idea to go to a real interview and reference porn?
It depended on the job, I would think.
I love that she immediately picked up on what everyone else on the internet has also picked up on over the years. She nails it immediately. His mentality is, I can't, just giving up on everything. That is how he's approached everything online, yet still feels a sense of entitlement where he shouldn't need to put a whole lot of effort into YouTube or anything. People should just be giving him money for existing. She picks up on that mindset right away. That's how clearly he wears this on his sleeve. It's his whole personality of just feel sorry.
Oh, so you're telling me in order to not call Vosh's rhetoric genocidal, I would have to have a broader context for what he's talking about? Huh. How curious for us to say, well, Vosh's would qualify as genocidal rhetoric if you didn't just look at the fact that he was doing satire to combat whatever the fuck. Oh, so there's additional context. There's more at play there than just the words. The words themselves do not imply genocidal rhetoric without there being some other things around it that we can look at and observe, right?
Sorry for me, and here's the reasons why you should feel sorry for me.
I'm not debating with you in chat.
Upsetting, because it doesn't have to be that way. Again, he's still alive. He can fix things. Work towards.
Go fuck off and cry to Wick about how horrible I am. Go and fuck off and cry to food shops or cry to fucking President Sunday and have your little fucking jerk off session. I don't know what the fuck you want from me. I'm not going to pull you into a VC with me. I'm not going to get triggered and pull into another debate where you're going to pull some whack shit and then have people mass report me immediately afterwards. It's just not going to happen. I'm not going to pull you into a conversation and I'm not going to debate with you in chat.
things, improve things if he wanted to, but he fucking refuses to. And when the lady does say, like, hey, look, you know, it's not impossible, you do have some challenges, he decides to go even harder to make it even more difficult by saying, oh, I also work in the porn industry. To which she's dumbfounded. Like, would you really say that during a real interview? Because he's clearly just trying to ruin this. He doesn't want a real working job outside of YouTube or anything. And he makes that super clear with this phone call that or with this message he leaves the documentary filmmaker.
Violent crimes or sexual crimes.
Hey, Mike, listen, dude. I know we're making this documentary and everything, and I know you think I need to get a real job, but I just want to let you know I'm not going to. I'm not going to walk into some job when I have 4 million subscribers on YouTube. I'm one of the original YouTubers. What I'm going to do instead is go back to making content. Go lay down. Go lay down. Go lay down. Good job. Yeah, so, I mean, things aren't great. People are still mad at me on YouTube.
That fucking ego is infuriating. One of the OG YouTubers, I can't just get a fucking job, this is ridiculous. 4 million subscribers on YouTube, that's for plebeians, not for Boogie. At one point in this documentary, he mentions that he must have like covert narcissism or something, and he absolutely is a narcissist, 100%. Like, I'm not a medical professional or anything, like I can't actually diagnose it, but everything that is showcased in this documentary feels like it's narcissistic personality disorder. What's crazy is I haven't even touched on the saddest parts of the documentary.
Hey, can you develop narcissistic personality disorder? Okay, I just didn't know if it was just like more of like a predisposition thing, or if you're born with it, or if you develop it, or... Oh, okay. So he probably developed it.
The bits and pieces I've loosely touched on in this video here don't even make up what I believe is the hardest to stomach portions of the documentary. Mike Klum and the team really did an incredible job with this piece. So again, if you're at all interested, check it out. No part of him that seems to actually want to change for the better. He just views it as he's already defeated. So he's just...
What are you looking for? Well, they might be. 1 second, guys. Yeah. Oh. All right, here we go.
Just going to continue being self-destructive, I guess. When I don't understand it. There is still so much opportunity and time for him to actually improve his life. And over the last 5 or 6 years, he's talked about that a lot, about how he's going to do this, that, and get better at this and that. And he just doesn't. He just refuses to. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this because I just finished the documentary. We also talked about it on the podcast. That'll be up on the official YouTube channel sometime in the next couple days. It's just sad. It's just
sad.
Happening now, Ivanka Trump under oath testifying in the civil fraud trial against the Trump Organization. We have a new update on what she just said on the stand.
And when it comes to abortion rights, the message...
Yeah, if Ellen isn't able to stop, I'll give him one more shot, one more comment to drop it.
Message from voters after last night. Can you hear me now? The 7th consecutive election where attempts to further restrict abortion access have been rejected since the Supreme Court stepped in.
And tonight we're down to 5. 5 Republican presidential candidates are going to face off on the debate stage in Miami. Trump, the front runner, skipping out once again to take the spotlight elsewhere, just down the street, by the way. I'm Sarah Sider with Kate Baldwin and John Berman. This is CNN Central.
All right, happening now at this moment, Ivanka Trump is on the witness stand in a New York courtroom. She's been there for nearly an hour or so, testifying in the civil fraud trial against her father and the family business. Now, she is no longer a defendant herself in this case, but she is clearly important to the state's case, as she is their final witness. We have new information about what she is being asked and how she is answering. Let's get right to CNN's chief legal affairs correspondent, Paula Reed. So what's happening now, Paula?
Well, John, so far this appearance has been quite a contrast to her father's appearance on the witness stand earlier this week, which was quite combative and chaotic.
Right, that's your last comment. That was your last comment to drop
at
it.
The Trump Organization.
Let's see if
she
you
left
can.
the family business in 2017 when she went to the White House, but the government has been asking her questions about specific projects that she worked on while she was there. They've been focused, for example, on the old post office building here in Washington, D.C., which was converted into a hotel. That was a project that she worked on, and she said that, yes, she did profit from its eventual sale in 2022. She did not disclose how much she made, but we've previously reported it was around $4 million. But they've also been asking her about other projects like the Doral Resort and Spa down in Florida, and they are especially interested in how financing was secured for these properties, her role in that, because it really gets to the heart of the case, specifically loans that were received from Deutsche Bank, and these loans had quite favorable terms. They were granted those kinds of loans based on Trump's purported net worth, and that gets to the heart of this case, the allegation that he did not accurately represent the value of his assets to get more favorable terms on loans and from insurance companies. So far the questioning, it has been very civilized, it has been very technical. That's pretty much what we expected from this witness. As you said, Ivanka is no longer a co-defendant in this case, but the Attorney General's office has been seeking to secure her testimony, even though she's tried several different times to get out of making this appearance. Before today's proceedings got underway, the Attorney General addressed cameras to talk about why they wanted to hear from Ivanka. Let's take a listen.
We uncovered the scheme, and she benefited from it personally. Ms. Trump will do all that she can to try to separate herself from this corporation, but she's inextricably tied to the Trump Organization.
Now they've already had the, I think it was Eric Trump jump on the bench, and he went up there to defend himself, and he said, listen, all I did was I just signed papers, all right? I wasn't intimately involved in any of this stuff. You know, I was just there like as a Nepo baby. I didn't really have any involvement whatsoever. But like the thing about that is they had immediate evidence that went to the contrary of that, where he's like emailing people back and forth about like how to evaluate certain properties. Like he was directly involved in like almost every aspect of the things that they were accusing him of being involved in, even though he's saying to everyone else like, hey, I wasn't really involved in any of this stuff. I was just, rubber stamping stuff. He just like immediately gets fucked when they show evidence to the contrary. So I wonder what Ivanka is going to do.
And to these properties that she helped secure financing for. So you cannot hide from the truth, and the facts will belie the truth and the evidence.
Now, no cameras in the courtroom while Ivanka is testifying, but we have our colleagues in the courtroom giving us live updates about what she says. She is expected to be the prosecution's last witness in this case.
All right, keep us posted. Again, she is on the stand right now. You'll keep bringing us more information as this testimony develops. Paula Reed, thank you. Sarah?
All right, let's continue this conversation now with former Assistant Special Watergate Prosecutor Nick Ackerman. He's also the former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Okay, we watched Ivanka Trump walk in like she owned the place. Right. She's now on the stand, a very different moment. Most people get very nervous when you're sitting there and having to be questioned under oath. I am curious, she's the fourth member of the Trump family to testify. What are they going to try to get out of her? Because she is not, in this case, she was taken out of this case as a defendant.
Well, she does add some important elements here. For example, she was the principal person for the Trump Organization that did the negotiations for the old post office building that was turned into that hotel that Donald Trump used to house various foreign diplomats to get lots of money for himself while he was president. But what she really did was, in negotiating with Deutsche Bank for the loan, $170 million loan, it was very clear that Deutsche Bank wanted personal financial statements from Donald Trump, not only to make the $170 million loan, but to keep it going all of those years. And the reason is obvious. Donald Trump filed for bankruptcy 6 different times. And what it does is it undercuts his testimony last week that the banks really didn't care. They clearly cared. And if the AG is careful, they will delineate all of those conversations about how important those financial statements were to getting that $170 million loan.
Can you give us sort of an overview of what hangs in the balance here? Because we're hearing all these details, you're seeing all these family members come up, you're seeing the contention between Donald Trump and the judge, the lawyer, his lawyer, and the judge. But ultimately, this is over fines, right? And money, correct?
Lots of money. At least $250 million the AG is trying to receive. And basically, at this point, Donald Trump is toast. I mean, he is basically going to be found to be a liar by the judge here. What people haven't focused on is not just his testimony last week, but it's also the testimony he gave in his deposition where he took the Fifth Amendment over 400 times.
Okay, we got one achievement.
Now, what does it mean to take the Fifth Amendment? It means that you are refusing to answer a question because a truthful answer would tend to be incriminating. Then what did Donald Trump do last week? He went into court and said, I didn't do anything fraudulent. I wasn't involved in a fraud, which is just the opposite of what, in effect, he was saying when he took the Fifth Amendment in his deposition. So you've got contradictory testimony. You can use his assertion of the Fifth Amendment against him to basically find that he's lying, that he's manipulating the system when he goes in, refuses to answer questions, answers the questions in a half-baked manner. I just don't see how this judge, at the end of the day, is not going to find that with respect to Donald Trump, liar, liar, pants on fire.
I knew you were going to say that, and that is where we're going to end it here. We're going back to elementary school, but it is elemental. There are things that you're either telling the truth or you're not on the stand, or in a deposition. And we should mention, everybody has the right to plead the fifth, but this is a civil trial, not a criminal trial.
Correct.
That can get you in trouble in the civil trial as opposed to a criminal trial.
Well, particularly when you take an opposite position.
Right.
I have been practicing civil law for well over 40 years. I have had a number of defendants take the Fifth Amendment. I have never seen anybody do such a stupid move as to suddenly start testifying after you've taken the fifth.
Yeah, very unusual move. Nick Ironman, thank you. It's always nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
All right.
Interesting. All right. Now, should we move on to the drama stuff, or should we watch some Israel-Gaza? Yeah, this is not a segment. I was just catching up on that. Requested access. Why would you need to request access? It should be available to you. Fuck me. Sorry, Tron. Here, 1 second. Let me see if I can fix that. Okay, let's see here. Share. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it wouldn't automatically give you access to it. There you go. Alrighty. You hate Republicans, don't we all?
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate my colleague from Kansas making a forceful case for why this package is necessary. We have been told by the president, we have been told by our Israeli allies, we have been told by a number of national security experts that Israel is in a fight for its life. And it's in a fight for its life against not just an enemy in Israel, but an enemy, radical Islamist terrorism, that very often has and is planning as we speak to come to our shores and to attack us. This is a common sense package. As the senator from Kansas mentioned, it gives the president the exact amount of money that he asked for to support our Israeli allies. What is different about our bill, what is different about the House's bill that had already passed, is from what the president requested is twofold. First of all, this is ready to go. It is ready to go today. If we pass this package today, aid would flow to our Israeli allies immediately. That is reason number one to support it. The other difference from the president's $106 billion behemoth of a supplemental is that this is about a single problem, because we should be debating single problems in this country. The world is complicated. Of course, the world has intertwined complexities, but we should have enough respect for the American people to debate these issues.
Every single fucking bill they want to do as a line item bill, but that takes like 2 weeks per line item to like debate for every single bill. It takes time. What they want to do is make it essentially impossible for the U.S. government to pass any legislation unless it is just like the most extreme, circumstance that everyone knows that this one item has to go through. But usually they'll say, okay, here's like a collection of bills that are all going to be in the kind of general area, of each other. They're all going to affect the same thing. Let's say increasing GDP or lowering inflation or for green energy. All of these different line items in this bill are going to address this broad issue that everyone agrees is there, right? Instead of collectively passing all of these bills that are all necessary, as one giant bill or even one medium-sized bill. They want to do it line item by line item so that nothing ever gets done. And in the United States, nothing ever gets done anyways. We don't have the ability to pass legislation, partly because the Republican Party is completely at odds within itself, and the broader electorate is so divided that we have a split in Congress and the Senate that is very, very close. So you have to have some working with the other side. Neither side wants to work with each other, and the Republicans can't even work with each other, so nothing can get passed anyways. So they want to do these line item things, and it's just like they want to grind our entire government to a complete halt. They don't want our government to function. That is what they want. They want our government to cease functioning.
Issues distinctly because they raise separate questions. Many of my colleagues may forget that a matter of months ago, there were people in this chamber, there were people in the United States of America demanding that the state of Israel give money and weapons to the Ukrainians, money and weapons that the Israelis are now using this very moment to defend themselves. The idea that these policies are not in tension with one another, the idea that what happens in Russia and Ukraine is separate from what happens in Israel is not just obvious, it is common sense, and it has been borne out by the reality of the last couple of weeks.
They're separate issues, but that doesn't mean that we can't get it done in one go. Because the reason that they want to cut out the Ukrainian funding is because they don't want to fund anything going on in Ukraine. To the detriment of the United States, by the way. It would weaken our geopolitical stance in the entire world. They want to support Israel because, you know, everyone's constituency in the United States is pro-Israel, like by and large, outside of like a very few select communities. But the United States is very pro-Israel. So yeah, they all want to pass something for Israel. But if they want to pass something for Israel, with that previous bill, it would require that we also fund Ukraine, which they also hate America, right? So they want to let Russia donkey stomp the fuck out of Ukraine, and we just for some reason we're winning out of that. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Ukraine is an ally of ours. Russia is an explicit enemy. They do not like the United States. They do not have any desire to work with us. They explicitly say that they want to bring the United States to heel and to have a multipolar world order where the United States isn't as powerful as it is, so that they can control part of the world, so that they can become this giant empire like they used to be. And so they're going through and invading other fucking countries to do that. And we're just going to let them? I don't understand how that is pro-America, to allow our own position to be weakened so that Russia can have their section of the world.
Now, my colleagues would like to collapse these packages. Too many of my colleagues would like to collapse these packages because they would like to use Israel as a political fig leaf for the president's Ukraine policy. But the president's Ukraine policy, just like the Israeli policy, should be debated. We should talk about it. We should discuss it. We should separate the costs and benefits and analyze them as distinct policies, because that is what the American people deserve of their legislature. Now, there are many questions we could ask about the Ukraine policy, many issues that have gone completely unanswered. Number one, what is our end goal in Ukraine? You hear commonly that the goal is to throw the Russians out of every ounce of Ukrainian territory, and yet when you talk to the president's own administration in private, they admit that that is a strategic impossibility. Let me repeat that. No rational human being in the president's administration believes that it is possible to throw the Russians out of every inch of Ukrainian territory. So why is that the public justification offered by many advocates of indefinite, unlimited?
My understanding is the Biden administration's stance is they want to help the Ukrainians as long as the Ukrainians want help. It's not us dictating what their policy is going forward. It is, as long as they want to fight, we'll give you arms. So it's, the ball is in their court for what the goal is, right? The ball is in their court. It has nothing to do with the Biden administration choosing one thing or the other.
Ukrainian aid because this debate is fundamentally dishonest. We are not telling the American people the truth because we know that if we did tell them the truth, they would not support an indefinite flow of money to Ukraine. What are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? How long is this supposed to go on? How much money are we expected to spend? What is the strategic objective? What are we trying to do? Are we monitoring the fact that we have spent nearly $200 billion, if the supplemental passes, $200 billion to one of the most corrupt countries in the world? Do we have proper assurances that all that money is being spent on the things that we tell ourselves that it's being?
So, first off, Ukraine has previously been one of the most corrupt countries in the entire world. A lot of that has been both been worked on and solved. Not completely. They're not perfect. They're still, a post-Soviet state. There's going to be corruption, but they've been working on that, and they've been working with us in good faith to put an end to the corruption. And in terms of, how do we even know that this money is going towards the things that we want it to? Because Ukraine is still on the map. Because Russia hasn't been able to make any territorial gains since their the first phase of their operation in March of 2021. They haven't gotten any more ground anywhere. For 2 weeks, they captured Bakhmut. And then what happens? Wagner pulled out and Ukraine took it back. There's been the way that we know our money is actually going towards arms, and also the majority of the quote unquote money that we're sending them is literal just munitions. So it's X dollars worth of munitions. So it's not even like we're just sending them, $60 billion and saying, all right, well, you guys figure out how to spend it. Don't spend it all in one place, LOL. We're sending them fucking bombs and shit. And then we're saying that we're going to continue sending you bombs as long as you guys are wanting to fight. As long as you guys are willing, capable, able. That's been the policy. We know it's working because Russia's lost significantly more troops, whether you want to count just the Russian army or if you want to include especially if you want to include all of the private military companies that have gone in there. They've lost significantly more than the fucking Ukrainians. That's how we know that it's actually working.
Spent on? The answer, of course, is no, because we have not had a real debate in this chamber. The American people, I think, should be ashamed of us for that fact. Let me offer just one final
We are
observation
ashamed of you,
here.
but for different reasons.
You have heard in this chamber, you've heard even today, that the Ukraine policy was born of a spirit of bipartisan agreement. That we had this moment where Democrats and Republicans recognized that it was very, very important to help the Ukrainians push back against the Russian attack. And of course, we support and praise our Ukrainian friends. They've done a lot more than many people gave them credit for. But let's also be honest that for 30 years, Washington, D.C. has run on bipartisan foreign policy wisdom, and it has run this country to the ground with $1.7 trillion deficits, war after war after war.
Wait a second. What was that?
People gave them credit for. But let's also be honest that for 30 years, Washington, D.C. has run on bipartisan foreign policy wisdom, and it has...
It's not the fact that it's bipartisan that made that foreign policy bad. Why is bipartisanship a bad word? Bipartisan means that we are able to come together and agree on something that we can pass. Why is that a bad thing? Don't forget it's bombs we were going to throw away. Yeah, also the bombs that we were sending Ukraine are bombs that are set to be manually detonated so that we could replenish our stockpiles. True.
Run this country to the ground with
the fact that it's bipartisan is good. Now, the fact that it's bipartisan and the policy itself was bad, that's what is criticized. That's what you should criticize. And why were those decisions bad? Whether it was because of a lack of intel, fake intel that the senators got when it came to Iraq, right? That's the sort of shit that is the criticism, not the bipartisanship.
$1.7 trillion deficits, war after war after war that has killed thousands of Americans, millions of other people, and has not led to the strategic strength of this country. It was great bipartisan agreement after September the 11th that threw Saddam out of Iraq. And of course, a lot of people celebrated it until we now realize that Iraq is a client state of Iran. We empowered one of the worst regimes in the world with our bipartisan wisdom. Maybe what we should have is some bipartisan wisdom that the foreign policy consensus of this country for the last 3 decades has been a disaster. It's been a disaster for this country. It's been a disaster for our dead Marines, Army, soldiers, Navy sailors, and Air Force airmen. It has been a disaster for this country's finances, and it has been a disaster for the entire world. Let's have a real debate. We haven't had one in 30 years.
The fact that there was bipartisan, the fact that there was bipartisan bills that were passed meant that there was a debate. Like, definitionally. It's not like you get a one-sided fucking bill and that requires a ton of debate. Although often there is. The fact that it was bipartisan means that there was debate that was had, that both sides were able to come to agreement on. That's why it was good. Bipartisanship, sorry if you don't like it when people are able to come together towards common aims, but personally, I do. I like it when everyone's able to come together. Sexually. Anyways, let's see what this is.
This video was brought to you by Nebula.
Segment, by the way.
In the last few days,
editor.
Israel's invasion of Gaza has escalated rapidly. After cutting Gaza in two, severing communications, and dropping an unprecedented number of bunker-busting bombs around Gaza City Sunday evening, it now looks like the IDF have finally entered Gaza City itself. While reliable information about what's happening in Gaza is hard to come by, both because Israel frequently cuts off communication in Gaza and because the IDF have been very selective about which journalists are allowed to join them on operations, there have been reports of fighting in the southern suburbs around Zaytun and a push along the coast from Beit Lahia down to the district of Rimal. So in this video, we're going to have a look at what's happened so far, contextualize it by explaining Gaza's urban geography, and look at what might happen next. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. On Sunday, the IDF claimed to have split Gaza in two by occupying territory just north of the Wadi Gaza, which is the de facto evacuation line. In practice, this means that the IDF now have control over both the main roads out of Gaza City, the Salah al-Din road and the Al-Rashid coastal road, and fire control over the 4-kilometre strip in between. This was then followed by yet another communications blackout in Gaza, and then a series of massive airstrikes on Sunday night with what are sometimes known as bunker busters, high-density explosive bombs designed to damage Hamas's tunnel system. As of Tuesday morning, it looks like the IDF are now slowly pushing into Gaza City itself, with reports of skirmishes in the southern outskirts around Al-Zatoun, and a push along the coast near the Shati refugee camp. It's hard to know quite how far this push has gone. Israeli media is currently reporting that forward units have reached Al-Shifa Hospital, which Israeli intelligence believes is a dual-use base for Hamas leadership. But we've been unable to verify these reports, and it feels unlikely given quite how dense this part of Gaza is. Anyway, what makes all of...
Well, hold on. Al-Sharif. Do they have a Wikipedia? Isn't this the one that was definitely used as a... In 2014, Amnesty International reported that Hamas was using an outpatient clinic at the hospital to interrogate, torture, and kill Palestinians accused of having collaborated with Israel in an operation codenamed Operation Strangling Necks. So, third-party international, Amnesty International, something that people on the Palestinian side of this argument constantly cite. Al-Shifa, not Al-Sharif, sorry. Al-Shifa Hospital. It's already been confirmed that they've done this before.
base for Hamas leadership, but we've been unable to verify these reports, and it feels unlikely given quite how dense this part of Gaza is. Anyway, what makes all of this significant is that these are some of the first reports of fighting inside Gaza City itself. Previously, most of the fighting was occurring in the north of Beit Hanun and the west of Beit Lahia, two relatively small towns to the north of Gaza City. So what happens next? Well, no one really knows for sure, but the key thing to understand is that this really is only just the beginning. Sometimes when you hear statements like the IDF have cut Gaza in two or the IDF have entered Gaza City, it can sound like the IDF are making rapid progress or that the demise of Hamas is near. However, once you understand a bit about Gaza's urban geography, you'll realise quite how much there is left to do. Essentially, the IDF operation is focused on two of Gaza's 5 governorates, northern Gaza and Gaza City. In northern Gaza, there are basically 3 main settlements: Beit Lahia in the west, Beit Hanun in the east, and Jabalia in the centre, which is home to the Jabalia refugee camp. While Jabalia's refugee camp used to house over 100,000 people and obviously had a high density, Beit Lahia and Beit Hanun both had pre-war populations below 100,000, and neither were particularly dense. Where each of these settlements end and another begins is difficult to pinpoint. This is essentially because thanks to Gaza's unprecedented fertility rate and the subsequent rapid population growth, Gaza has experienced massive urban sprawl. Essentially, as people build new houses on the outskirts of cities, these cities expand until they start to overlap with neighbouring cities, and the precise boundaries between them start to blur. Urban sprawl in Gaza is something the Israeli military has been worried about for some time now, because it makes combined arms operations significantly more difficult. The former commander of Israel's 1982 Lebanon operation even once claimed that uncontrolled spontaneous urbanization is itself a threat of war. A similar thing has happened with Gaza City, which is basically the only settlement in the Gaza City governorate because it's expanded to swallow up all the other ones. Gaza City had a pre-war population of something like 600,000 and an average density of about 21,000 people per square kilometre, roughly the same as central Paris and 5 times as dense as Beit Hanun. Generally speaking, Gaza City can be divided up into 3 slices, each about 2 kilometres wide and 4 kilometres long, which get progressively more densely populated and therefore difficult for the IDF as you go west towards the coast. The first slice is its eastern suburb, which basically means anything outside the Salah al-Din main road, and comprises the district of Shaja'iyah. The population density in Shaja'iyah is about 15,000 people per square kilometre, so lower than the Gaza City average, but still about 3 times more densely populated than London. Shaja'iyah is really the only bit of Gaza City that the IDF ground troops have actually fought in recently, namely during the assault of Gaza in 2014, and it didn't go all that well for them. 16 elite Israeli troops were killed, and they only escaped by resorting to massive and dangerous artillery strikes. The second slice is essentially between the Salah al-Din road and the Al-Jala road. This area comprises the Old City and the districts of Al-Daraj and Al-Sabra. This slice is significantly more densely populated than the first one, and much of Al-Daraj has a population density above 30,000 people per square kilometre, making it more dense than Manhattan. To make this even more difficult for the IDF, the roads in this slice are a mishmash of winding, narrow streets, which reduces visibility and makes rapid advances significantly more difficult. The third slice runs between the Al-Jala road and the coast, or the Al-Rashid coastal road. This is the most densely populated bit of Gaza City, and mainly comprises the district of Ramal, Al-Nasar, and Sheikh Radwan. Even excluding the Shati refugee camp in the north, parts of Ramal have population densities above 50,000 people per square kilometre, and are literally some of the most densely populated places in the world. While the streets are straighter here, and much of Ramal and Al-Nasser are arranged in an American-style grid, things still won't be easy for the IDF. Not only is it ridiculously dense, but this is also where Gaza's tower blocks are, which will be difficult for the IDF to clear. So far, most of the IDF's operations have been performed outside Gaza City, or in sparsely populated outskirts like Shaja'iyah and Al-Zatoun. This has allowed the IDF to keep casualties relatively low, but the combat conditions in Gaza City itself are qualitatively different, especially in the second and third slices.
Wait, say that again? Hold on, I need to hear that again. We've been able to what?
Outside Gaza City, or in sparsely populated outskirts like Shajouiyah and Al Zatoun. This has allowed the IDF to keep casualties relatively low, but the combat conditions in Gaza City itself are qualitatively different, especially in the second and third slices, so expect the tone of the conflict to change in the coming weeks. That's unfortunately all we have time for on YouTube today, but if you enjoyed this video and want to support...
Okay, gotcha. All right. Let's see. Here's another segment. All right.
The Israeli...
I already had that tab open right there. I don't know how much I actually know enough to like counter like someone who's like that propaganda heavy. All right. Brittany Simon.
Mistake. Abby says Melina is literally the dream too. Why would he risk the relationship with her? But she's not. Because Melina is a woman who stays with the destiny. Just like the women who choose Andrew Tate and Justin Waller are women who are willing to choose them as partners. So is Melina literally the dream, or is she just beautiful? And I'm not like, no offense. Like I'm just saying I wouldn't date a woman who would date Andrew Tate, and I wouldn't date a woman who would date Destiny. So what are we really saying here? Right?
What a fucking insane statement.
So is Melina literally the dream, or is she just beautiful? And I'm not like, no offense. Like I'm just saying I wouldn't date a woman who would date Andrew Tate, and I wouldn't date a woman who would date Destiny. So what are we really saying?
What did they have another did they have another like big blow up that caused her to start like going full deranged like lefty style DDS, Destiny Derangement Syndrome? Or is this just like out of fucking nowhere? Like I know that he has a Exhibit B, and I think that this one was worse.
For the same reason this woman's not leaving. Melina's not leaving for the same reason this woman's not leaving. I love him. My life is good. I hate it. I'm afraid to face it, and I'll lose everything that I have. Support, resources, status on the internet, like everything. She's not leaving for the same reason this woman's not leaving. And therefore, they all deserve each other. But they are not in healthy relationships. They are in dysfunctional relationships. And it's bullshit. And since they turn into...
Like... Isn't this just victim blaming to say that like Destiny is so bad? Destiny is so bad.
Everything. She's not leaving for the same reason this woman's not leaving. And therefore they all deserve each other. But they are not in healthy relationships. They are in dysfunctional relationships. And it's bullshit. And since they turn into content, I'm going to fucking talk about it. I'm so sick of people being like, you can't talk about his relationship when all we do is talk about these people's relationships. We literally all make a living talking about Fresh and Fit's relationships, making fun of their relationships. You notice how Destiny and Melina always say, like, I don't know.
The difference is that Brittany was like friends with Destiny. Does anybody know if there's like a full, because I tried to pull up her stream of this and just like see how long she went on a rant about them. But all of her shit is just like all members only. Does anybody have a longer cut of this? Or do you guys even know? I guess I could message the JST guy because I think he's on Discord. Here, I'll see if I can message him, and then I'll see if we can cover something else for a little bit, because I don't know. It matters how long she talked. Okay, let me message this guy before I forget. Melina is pretty much successful by herself. She comes from a very wealthy family. Truth is, she does not need Destiny for a lot of things. Money, she doesn't need Destiny for a lot of things, and money is not one of those things. You mean to say money is one of those things that she does not need him for? Yeah, she like. Let's see. Marco. Are we back? Looks like it. All right, let's see. Does it tell you how many average concurrent viewership? Almost 2,000, 2,600, 1,600, 1,200, 2,700. So we're not looking at bad stats for Melina there, right? Can we see how many subs she has? 365. Let's see here. Go to our calculator. 365 times 5 divided by 2. So just from subs, she's getting almost 1,000 a month. Then add in whatever her ad revenue cut is from Twitch. I don't know if that's different for everyone that has a partner contract. Then any, what do you call them? Advertisers that are sponsoring her streams or any videos or anything. And then add in any direct donations. I think that she's pretty much fine on what she's doing right now. Okay? I think that she's probably fine. And that's assuming that she has the 50-50 split with Twitch, which I think that they brought back 70-30 to partners, depending, right? Imagine simping for someone else's wife. No, it's not that I'm simping for Melina. It's that the fucking person is fucking unhinged. And they're making weird assumptions. It's like the obsession that's really weird to me.
No, Melina's not leaving for the same reason this woman's not leaving. Melina's not leaving for the same reason this woman's not leaving. I love him. My life is good. I hate it. I'm afraid to face it. And I'll lose everything that I have. Support, resources, status on the internet, like everything. She's not leaving for the same reason this woman's not leaving. And therefore, they all deserve each other. But they are not in healthy relationships. They are in dysfunctional relationships. And it's bullshit. And since they turn it into content, I'm going to fucking talk about it. I'm so sick of people being like, you can't talk about his relationship when all we do is talk about these people's relationships. We literally all make a living talking about Fresh and Fit's relationships, making fun of their relationships. You notice how Destiny and Melina always say, like, I don't know why Brittany's talking about, or not Melina, but Destiny will say, like, I don't know.
She doesn't want to shit talk Melina too much, but then she's like directly saying that she is at fault for being with Destiny, which I guess in like the loosest sense she is. In the loosest sense she is, but you know. Okay, we're going to see if that guy has like a full VOD of that so we can drama farm. But let's watch what this guy has to say. Gray zone guy.
The thing is that some of them are Semites, yes, but they're a very tiny percentage. And these are the Jews that, you know, were there and never left. But the Ashkenazi, they're white European Jews. Palestinians are also Semites. Arabs are Semites. So if you want to talk about anti-Semitic, I have several points here. Israel is anti-Semitic. It is the most anti-Semitic thing on the planet. It hijacks the Jewish religion, Judaism. It hijacks it and says we are the Jewish state, the Jewish state. You know, they claim to speak for all Jews, which is insulting because you're basically, first of all, you're with your actions committing genocide in Gaza. You are dirtying and staining the religion, which is an offense that is offensive to anybody who's Jewish. Number two, the people you're killing are Semites, Arabs, Palestinians. They are Semites. When you murder 10,000 Semites in 3 weeks, yeah.
I think that we're doing word games here because when people talk about anti-Semitism, they're almost always talking about people being racist towards Jewish people, right? They're not sitting there like, oh, well, you know, I hate those Palestinians because they're also ruling the world, right? I just don't think that that's like the character of what anti-Semitism is when people are talking about it at all. So we're just playing word games. Yeah, they might be Semitic people, but they're not Jewish. So when we talk about anti-Semitism, everyone's talking about Jews. They're not talking about Semitic people.
You're pretty fucking anti-Semitic, and when you put them in a concentration camp, you are anti-Semitic. Yes, you are. And the thing is that they are not even Semitic. These European American Jews that are coming to Israel are.
Yeah, they are. They are Semitic. A lot of the fucking like Ashkenazi Jews, I'm pretty sure that on like 23andMe's, they track those genetics, and a lot of those people have a lot of heritage that comes from that area of the world. Does that give them an automatic land right to that area? No, but you could just say that, right? Genetics doesn't equal land ownership. That's totally fine, and I would agree with that. But like, you're making these like claims that are just not true. You're making claims that are just completely false in order to say like, oh, well, because the Israelis are white, they don't have land rights to that land. Even if they, like, let's say that you're wrong and they're Semitic people. Just because they're Semitic people doesn't give them the right to like own the land either, right? It's just that that's the situation we find ourselves in. Right? Blame the British if you want to blame the British. Blame the early Zionists if you want to blame the early Zionists. If you want to blame someone for like the current issues, blame Netanyahu and the Likud party. But like, you can't just like say that, oh, well, they're white, so they don't have land claims that are legitimate here, because it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is for land claims. I'm sorry. I wouldn't grant that to Native Americans. I wouldn't grant that to Russians who have who basically colonized the entirety of eastern Ukraine for, to get rid of the Ukrainian identity there, to shore up support for the USSR, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I wouldn't say that because they lived there for, however many decades that they automatically get land rights there. Like, that's just so stupid. Melina has a Fansly account with almost 35,000 followers. Yeah, she also has all the Coomers. True.
Not Semites. They're just not Semites. They're not from the region.
Who cares?
You have always had Semites who are Jewish, Semites who are Christian, Semites who are, Muslim. And they never left. They are in the region, And the thing is, what Israel did is
because when people, once again, I just want to like point this out. When people talk about like anti-Semitism, they're talking about Jewish people, because when people are being anti-Semitic, they're talking about anti-Semitic conspiracy theories like, the Jews rule the world in international banking, right? They're not, when people say when people are being anti-Semitic and they're talking about, people ruling banks, they're not talking about Palestinians. They're not talking about the Palestinian Christians. They're talking about Jews. They're talking about Jews. That's why when we talk about anti-Semitism, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Jews.
Israel on purpose destroyed all the Jewish communities in the Arab countries so that it could steal the Jews from those Arab countries and put them in Israel. So that, number one, it could, legitimize itself as the Jewish state. Like, oh, look, we have had Semites who are Jewish, Semites who are Christian, Semites who are, Muslim. And they never left. They are in the region, And the thing is, what Israel did is Israel on purpose destroyed all the Jewish communities in the Arab countries so that it could steal the Jews from...
What are you... They destroyed them? What about, like... Is he referencing, like, the big deportations from Arab countries after 48, I think? Where all the Muslim countries came through and deported all of the Jewish people, not the Israelis, right? They invaded Israel and then they deported all the Jews. Yeah, I thought they were ethnically cleansed. He means the Exodus after independence? Yeah, so you mean when they were ethnically cleansed out of the areas, right?
From those Arab countries and put them in Israel so that, number one, it could, legitimize itself as the Jewish state. Like, oh, look, we have all the Jews in the world here. And number two, increasing the population reinforces the ethnic cleansing, right? Because the bigger the population, the harder it is to undo the ethnic cleansing, which is a crime against
Jews. That's not untrue. That definitely counts for the settlements. It definitely counts for the settlements. But all the people that moved there after independence, They didn't destroy those communities. Israel didn't destroy those communities. They were kicked out of Saudi Arabia and Syria and Iraq and Iran and all of these places. They were kicked out of Jordan. They were kicked out of Egypt. And then they were welcomed with open arms in Israel. So maybe because they were offered a home somewhere else after they were ethnically cleansed out of all of those lands, that counts as Israel being evil. But I would say that probably the ethnic cleansing that happened of the Jews in all these other countries, probably anti-Semitic, probably they just really hated Jews.
Humanity. So what they did is, for example, in Iraq, the Israelis bombed a Jewish temple, a synagogue, to scare Iraqi Jews into running away and moving to Israel. Once again, I'm going to repeat that. The Israeli Mossad bombed a synagogue in Iraq, in Baghdad, to scare Iraqi Jews into moving to Israel. Israel also used and exploited. What they would do is they would go to the Jewish community in Egypt.
Have you guys ever heard of the USS Liberty incident? Kind of makes you think that all of these false flag attacks from towards Israel and Jews might have maybe some more sinister purpose. Like he's like when people like this talk about Israel, it literally just sounds like Nick Fuentes talking about Jews. They'll say that they're not talking about Jews, but it's literally the same kind of fucking conspiracies as the fucking Nazis do. This is why I've never engaged in explicit Holocaust arguments, because there's always going to be some specific incident that people will point towards that I might not know about, that I can't directly refute, and they're always going to find just more and more granular little events, right? Instead of talking about the explicit policies and the explicit actions of these states like Iraq, like Lebanon, like Jordan, like Iran, like Saudi Arabia, where they explicitly kicked out all the Jews by force and then would not give their property back when they wanted to return. They were told not to return. It's just you have to completely fabricate entire timelines. As if do you guys know the Mandela effect? I feel like half the time when we talk about these people, right, I'm living in some Mandela effect world where there's just no synchronicity, right? There's no synchronization between events that they're referencing and that happened according to anything that I read or watch or discussions that I've listened to. There's just no synchronicity, and there's been this massive time shift where half of the human population comes from this world where Israel literally is just bloodthirsty, going around actively attacking every Jew that they can find so that they can scare them into moving to Israel, so that they can purposefully genocide every single Palestinian. That's the way that this seems to me.
Egypt, for example, and exploit it and use the people without them knowing for the Mossad, for spying or for sabotage. And then what they did is that they basically turn people against the Jewish community, because now everybody's saying, well, are you working with the Mossad? How do we know who's working with the Mossad? So they go and corrupt and dirty the name of the Jewish community. And they don't even care about the Jews that are killed or sent to prison because of their actions.
Doesn't this go literally both ways here? Doesn't that ring true word for word what is happening to the Palestinian people, where they're getting a bad name for them because of Hamas?
Corrupt and dirty the name, basically turn people against the Jewish community, because now everybody's saying, well, are you working with the Mossad? How do we know who's working with the Mossad?
That literally goes one-to-one with what people say about fucking Hamas and Palestinians. That Hamas has sullied the name of the average Palestinian so hard because they integrate themselves so effectively with the so effectively within the population that nobody can really tell who is Hamas and who isn't Hamas. That's like the entire argument that people are having right now. Why would you pretend like this is just like going one way? If you want to say that people are skeptical of all Jews because you don't know who's working for Mossad, that's sure, fine. If you want to say that, that's fine. We can have that discussion. But like at the same time, you also have to recognize that Israel has a really tough time trusting a lot of Palestinians. Israelis have a hard time trusting a lot of Palestinians. Why? Because Hamas is there and they make it really hard to know who's good guy and who's bad guy, who is civilian and who is a, terrorist. What was that? Let me kill these fucking ranged dudes before I get fucked. There we go.
So they go and corrupt and dirty the name of the Jewish community. And they don't even care about the Jews that are killed or sent to prison because of their actions. The whole scandal in Egypt with the Mossad, they even bombed American and British institutes that were run by the embassies. So much for allies, right? Jesus. So they did that on...
Israel has bombed UN facilities and US facilities, like schools and shit. Why? Because Hamas... We just looked up that Al-Shifa hospital. Even Amnesty International recognizes that Hamas uses clinics to interrogate, torture, and kill Palestinians accused of having collaborated with Israel, right? Is this the one that was like the quote-unquote de facto headquarters of Hamas? No. This was the one that had the hospital. Oh, no. This was another hospital bombing.
On purpose to Israel did that on purpose. They turned the people against the Jewish community in Egypt so that the Jews would be scared and move to Israel. So they did this everywhere. In Syria, for example, there are no more Jews. Israel took all of them against their will. They didn't even want to go. And I find that disgusting because what makes Syria really great is the fact that you have a million different religious groups and ethnicities. It's like a fabric, a patchwork.
I don't think that very many people, except for Muslims, and specifically, I think they're Shia Muslims. I don't think that they want to live there because there's people like ISIS there. And if you disagree with religious fanatics, bad things tend to happen to you. So I'm sure that might play into the fact that a lot of people don't want to live in fucking Syria, okay? Even people in Lebanon were like, hey, we'll finally fully support Hamas, or not Hamas, what is it? Hezbollah for a little bit because at least they're fighting ISIS. But Jesus.
And they took away the Jewish community from Syria. And on top of that, they were, when the earthquake happened a few months ago in Turkey and Syria, the Turkish authorities caught Israelis trying to...
And think about this. If it was Jewish people, if it was the Israelis who were going around and bombing these synagogues and shit to scare the Jews out of living in Syria, especially back in the 1940s, think about the how they would get that information, right? How would they get that information? If Syria didn't want the Jews to leave, would they not report on that being an Israeli strike and say, hey, we actually don't want you guys to leave, right? You guys are welcome here. We would never want to just expel all of the Jews from our territory. We would never want to do that. That would be horrible, right? No, that sort of message never went out. Why? Because they were kicking the Jews out. It would be way harder, especially in that day and age, for Israel to get the message across that, hey, it was, it was the Syrians that bombed you. Did you hear about this? Pakistan's decision to expel more than 1.5 million allegedly undocumented Afghan refugees and migrants. I have not. Jesus fuck.
Steal an ancient Jewish artifact from Syria, right? Which was it's always been in Syria. It comes from Syria. Syria has some of the oldest monasteries on the planet, Christian monasteries. It has also, I think, the oldest synagogue on the planet. So there's so much history for so many communities and religious groups. And now what Israel has done is they've damaged and destroyed some of that some of the community, the Syrian population, and also the social fabric, which I find disgusting and unfair. And excuse me. So they are anti-Semitic. The Israelis are, really, truly anti-Semitic. And they claim they're Semites so that they can take the land and say, no, you haven't. You have not been here. Every Israeli prime minister is Eastern European. They come from Poland, from Ukraine, from Russia. And once again, there's nothing wrong with emigrating somewhere. On the contrary, Jews were emigrating to Palestine for 4 decades with no problem. But then the plan behind Zionism, and why
there was some problems leading up to 48. There were some problems leading up to 48, my friend. Okay, let's not pretend like that wasn't the case. There were some terrorist attacks from both Jewish people and from Arabs towards the Jews. Okay, let's not pretend like it was all rosy and just peachy keen. There were definitely a lot of issues leading up to 48 still.
You had the mass immigration was to create Israel. Then there was a problem because now you're putting one group on a pedestal and turning it into an ethno state. That group is superior to all the others. It doesn't work like that. You can't do that in the Middle East. You can't do that. Everybody is equal. You have too many religious groups and ethnic groups to do this kind of stuff. You destroy the society.
Man, it would be great if everyone just decided to get along. Unfortunately, the religious extremists, like people in Hamas, right, like people in ISIS, don't believe the same things that you're saying. There were Christians in Syria getting beheaded by ISIS because they were Christian. They don't believe in this egalitarian, free love, all gas, no brakes. Anyone can be anyone, any religion they want. Type bullshit that you're saying. They just never have believed that. Maybe I would give more credence to that in places that are holy lands, like near Jerusalem, right? Where there are 3 major religions that all have like the same areas as holy sites. Whether it's Bethlehem, I think also has religious significance in Judaism and in Islam, and in Christianity. I think that Jericho maybe has significance in all 3, but I'm not like 1,000,000% sure. Jerusalem definitely does. So in like areas like that, I can see there being a lot more leeway, but like elsewhere, no. Like there is not this free love attitude towards different religious groups. It's just not true.
Society, and that's what Israel has done. They have just destroyed the entire.
Wasn't Jericho in the Old Testament? My dad was a pastor, and so I'm just trying to remember. I'm just throwing out names of cities. Wasn't Jericho the city that they like marched around 3 times and then the walls came down? Or am I super wrong on that? I can't remember for sure, but I think that that's right.
Entire region and created so many problems by putting one part of the community on a pedestal and having them control everybody else. Remember, Israelis are a minority, just like the French were a minority in Algeria, but they're running the whole country and they're abusing the population, the native population, and then pretending they're victims on top of it. I mean, this is so.
The situation between Algeria and Israel are so significantly different. Like my understanding with like Algeria was it was an explicit settler colonial state there in order to mine the resources, to rape the land of the resources and of the labor of the people there, right? I don't think that it was supposed to be an explicit homeland for French people where they were trying to ethnically cleanse all the Algerians out so that they could have more land rights. Like, these are completely different situations. According to Joshua 6:1-27, the walls of Jericho fell after the Israelites marched around the city walls once a day for 6 days, 7 times on the 7th day, with the priests blowing their horns daily and the people shouting on the last day. Man, those sound waves were fucking giga strong.
Disgusting, really. And you should, I want to show you a video. This is from the last few days. I want you to see how Israel treats Jews who are pro-Palestinian. I want you to just see this. I want you to see how Israel treats Jews who are pro-Palestinian. I want you to just see this.
Damn.
What is this behavior?
Yeah, it's bad. But the difference between, I feel like the difference between like the position that I hold and like basically any of the lefties that are putting out messaging around Israel-Palestine right now is that me, people who are more closely aligned with me, people who are more centrist or like liberal, they're going to be fully willing and capable of saying, yeah, no, that was bad. Why would you think that I think that that's good? That's obviously fucking bad. It's a bad thing that they just did. That was just unambiguously a overreach of police actions because he's pro-Palestinian. And also, I do want to point out, we have no idea why that altercation happened because I don't think any words were even audible for us to hear to decide on what the actual fight was about. If it was that he was pro-Palestinian, then that's bad. Not going to say it's good. But like, yeah, it's super easy to condemn the bad actions of the Israelis because the Israelis do bad things sometimes. Israeli police do bad things sometimes. IDF does bad things sometimes. The Likud party has bad policies around especially the West Bank and Gaza. It's super hard to pry out of these people any concessions besides, yeah, killing civilians is bad, but can we concede also that there are legitimate security concerns that the Israelis might have because of all of the terrorist activity that Hamas has done? Are we also willing to concede that there's like almost no way that this can ever move forward without Hamas being destroyed? Can we get that concession? No. Can we concede that there's probably as much of a reason for Israelis to be somewhat, let's say, skeptical of the of Palestinians, right? And even to the point of like, you know, having some kind of racist attitudes in the same way that Palestinians do towards Jewish and Israeli people? If we can't concede all of these things, then I don't think that you're having an honest conversation. Because, yeah, Jewish people are fucking scared of Palestinians, not because they're brown, but because there's been a lot of terrorist activity from Palestinians. Where you can watch interviews of little kids from Palestinian areas literally saying that, I want to kill Jews. I can't wait for the day where I can finally stab a Jew in the throat, right? We watched that the other day. There's brainwashing that goes on, sure, but everyone has at least a reason. While we could say that it doesn't mean that you should resort to violence and that there are different ways that you can move forward, right? There are reasons why people might be skeptical of the other side, why they might be a little bit in distaste of like the West Bank and Gaza because of all the terrorists. It just feels like no one wants to actually engage with any real thing that Israel has to go through, right? Like we watched Voss yesterday say that, yeah, there should be a ceasefire between Gaza and Israel, and even if Hamas breaks that ceasefire, Israel should never respond. Like they just want Jews to sit back and take all attacks with no response ever. For some reason. For some reason, that's fair and egalitarian.
What is this for? Why? Jesus.
Also, we don't know what it's for because we don't know why he did that, but damn, there was another health that was dropped, but I can't find it now.
So much for the Jewish state. You know, it's as soon as you open your mouth, and so much for democracy, right? They claim they're a democracy, but if you say you open your mouth about what the government's doing and how racist it is, and you know that it's a colony, look how they treat you, even if you're Jewish. And this is no different to 100 years ago in Palestine, when I told you they were mass emigrating from Europe to create Israel. The Jews who were anti-Zionist, like the ones I just showed you on tape,
how do we
were
know?
assassinated.
Was there
one of them was going on tape. Where, like the ones I just showed you on tape,
ultra-Orthodox
were
Jew.
assassinated.
Hold on, let me.
And
where is it? What the fuck? Where's the video?
I want you to just see this.
Yeah, we have no reason to believe that.
As soon as you open your mouth, and so much for democracy, right? They claim they're a democracy, but if you say you open your mouth about what the government's doing and how racist it is, and you know that it's a colony, look how they treat you, even if you're Jewish. And this is no different to 100 years ago in Palestine, when I told you they were mass emigrating from Europe to create Israel. The Jews who were anti-Zionist, like the ones I just showed you on tape, were assassinated. One of them was going to London to talk to the British government to convince them not to do, what the Balfour Declaration set out to do, which is create a Jewish state in Palestine. You know, as if Palestine belongs to Britain or something.
Cool.
You know, the arrogance. And in any case, this guy was assassinated by the Zionists, by the Israeli militias that then became the Israeli army, just because he was anti-Zionist. I think you get the point. There's definitely no freedom of speech here. There's no there's no room for dissent. You either do what they say, or
if there's no room for dissent, then why was there like mass IDF protests? People protesting from the IDF against the Likud party and Netanyahu trying to change the entire constitutional system. No room for dissent? Why are those people not shipped off into gulags?
Or they're going to whip you, they're going to kill you, Jewish, not Jewish, doesn't matter. And many of the if you look at the pro-Palestinian voices, you know, many of them are Jewish, actually, and then they get attacked by the, Jewish lobby, or I should say Zionist lobby, excuse me, like AIPAC or the other variations in the UK, and they call them self-hating Jews. Again, what happened to the democracy aspect? I thought you can have, debate and discuss things. No, you're a self-hating Jew. You can't win. You can't win with colonial. You can't win against colonizers because the colonialism is too ingrained in their brains. It's not going anywhere.
So, no prescription after that? Interesting. All right, we only got like 10-ish minutes before I need to jet. Is there any fun short memes that we can go through? Man, I wish that there was a pop-out player for... I saw a screen cap of this. I do not want to watch that. I would rather die. No. Nope. It's actually too cringe for me to want to watch. I see you guys posting stuff in content suggestions and interesting articles. It's just that I can't watch something that's like super long right now.
They coined, there's an expression, I don't know if they coined it or whether it's a commonplace in your generation. The expression is gooning, Gooning.
Grooming or gooning?
Gooning, Gooning. It means basically being transfixed with porn, video porn, for like 24 or 48 hours straight. If straight's the right word there. And it struck me, now I know this is going to sound harsh, but it struck me that even though this crowd considered itself bohemian, and even though this crowd considered itself, what would you say, anti-establishment, it struck me this was exactly the crowd that would go over to fascism.
So true. Who is Norman Finkelstein? Yeah, I can't watch this. I think I'll actually just like I think that my body at an atomic level would just disintegrate into, at the atomic level, all the way down, just into a puddle. Okay, let's watch like one more short thing and then let's see. The Hill.
RFK Jr. may have left the Democratic Party, but he's still having a pretty significant impact on Democratic candidate polls, especially President Joe Biden's poll numbers. As Breaking Point's co-host Sagar Enjeti posted, quote, "It's one thing to ignore Robert Kennedy Jr. in a Democratic primary, but it is a whole other to ignore him when he is shaping up to be the most formidable third-party candidate in more than a century."
According to a recent New York Times Siena College poll, RFK Jr. is raking in as much as 25% support in some key battleground states like Michigan and Georgia. Now, many argue the spoiler candidate should be allowed to participate in presidential debates, especially if he gets ballot access while polling this high. If he spoils the race, so be it. They can try to other candidates can talk about the issues that matter to him in order to compete for those votes as well. But the Lincoln Project, a centrist PAC, decried Fox News' coverage of RFK Jr., Cornel West, and Dean Phillips campaigns, accusing them of being part of the, quote, Trump coalition, those candidates. Who are the proofs in the pudding? A new 2024 poll out of Iowa.
I feel like I feel like the stuff that RFK talks about isn't very attractive to Democratic voters, but it's very attractive to Republican voters or anti-establishment voters. I don't feel like there's this massive desire for an RFK, vaccine denier on the Democratic side. Am I wrong on that? Didn't we look up polling on this and that the support for RFK was higher amongst Republicans than both Democrats and independents combined? This, one second. Oh, this is just a general poll. 41 Trump, 35 Biden, RFK. And this is where? General election. Haley 49, Biden 43. Yeah, I think that it's time for Biden to actually step up to the plate and start campaigning. It's time. I don't think that there's any way around that right now because the guy is getting demolished by the perception that he's not doing anything, right? I think Biden needs to be out there way more, right? Give this man some meth, right? Get him out, woken up, speaking at universities, have him speaking at rallies, right? Talking about his record of getting people to pass bills, even though he only had a 1-seat majority in the Senate. and by 1-seat majority, I mean the tiebreaker vote with the vice president, not even an actual majority at all. Like, he needs to get out there.
Shows Trump leading 41%, Biden at 35%, and independent RFK Jr. and Cornel West earning 16 and 4% respectively, for a total of 20% of the vote. So RFK Jr.'s current poll numbers are very significant, and they're reminiscent
I don't
of
know if I trust this
kind of actually Ross Perot sort of three-way race. That's a significant amount of support. That's above the kind of baseline support that third parties are usually getting, somewhere between like 1% and 5% in the polls, and then 1% at the end of the day. The Libertarian Party did a little bit better than that in 2016, I believe, so substantially better than that, but still single-digit results. RFK Jr. is slated to have an effect.
Yeah, so the Lincoln Project is a group of never Trump Republicans that have allied themselves with the Democratic Party and who are frustrated forever and always by third-party efforts because they're concerned about a spoiler effect that would put Trump back in office. What's interesting is that polls are sort of mixed about who RFK Jr. has a negative effect on. What we saw when he was a Democrat seemed to be that the logic was, because he was running in the Democratic Party, by default, he was going to be taking votes away from Joe Biden in the primary. Obviously, Donald Trump isn't competing in the Democratic primary. So there seemed to be some advantage to conservative outlets and kind of independents to give him a platform, buoy him, and laud the things about his platform that they also agree with. Now that he's running as an independent, I think you've seen a little bit of a shift, and wherein, because he does seem to be pulling a lot of voters who are disaffected from both parties, potentially a threat, you're not seeing him get the same amount of accolades. I do think that his own behavior has played a role in this. His stance on Israel and his stance on some of the free speech issues relating to Israel haven't helped him very much. But I also think a lot of it is that the media attention, the character of the media attention that he used to get from the right has changed.
Yeah, the Lincoln Project, I would have even sterner criticism of them. They claim to be people trying to rescue the Republican Party for Donald Trump. I would say they're basically just operating as Democrats, and in fact are kind of grifting people into thinking that they're actually Republicans. They're,
The Lincoln Project are Republicans that are never Trumpers, and yeah, they probably align more with the Democrats right now because the Republicans don't even have a platform that they can campaign off of, other than we're not Democrats and the Democrats are evil pedophiles and the Democrats are spending too much and the Democrats are doing this and the Democrats, but they don't have any actual like counter policies. They don't have anything like that. So like, why the fuck would anyone want to vote for them, right? It would probably be better to have the Republican Party kind of dissolve and then reform, or like move back to previous values that they had. That more Republicans would be on board with, but they don't. The Republican Party as a whole doesn't seem to have that much of a desire to actually get anything done. As we watched earlier, they literally want to do line item votes on literally everything because they don't want our government to function. So why would they want more people to come together ever?
Joy Reid's favorite Republican. They're on MSNBC a lot. They got caught. They did. Do you remember that stunt? Like they were very anti Glenn Youngkin. They say they're just focused on the good of the Republican Party and getting rid of Trump, but they went hard after Glenn Youngkin. They did that tiki torch stunt. Do you remember that? They tried to make it look like there were racist people supporting Youngkin, but that was their. It was a whole embarrassing thing. Actually, I think I did a radar on it a long time ago. If you want to Google that. But anyway, yes. So of course they're going to disparage anything that they perceive as threatening Joe Biden. Now, it's an open question at this point whether RFK Jr.'s independent candidacy is hurting Joe Biden more, Donald Trump more, or whether, and I don't think that matters. Again, I think that's fine for him to eat into support. That's how it works.
Just look at his policies line by line and then see who supports those policies more. And I'm like probably pretty sure that the Republicans are going to be way more in line with most of, if not all of what RFK says compared to Democrats. Like I'm pretty sure like he is a Democrat in name only, to steal that that phrase from the Republicans. They have the rhinos and we have the dinos. And I'm pretty sure the only person that I would call a dino is RFK. Even Manchin, like, was still a Democrat, right? He was still a Democrat, but he was a conservative Democrat. This guy doesn't seem to have any of the same values, except for maybe like he might be in favor of universal health care. I'm not 1,000% sure, but like, Jesus.
Works. No one is owed your vote. You don't have to. You shouldn't be thinking, oh, well, I just have to vote for the least bad candidate. No, you should vote for the candidate you like the best. If the other candidates did a better job speaking to the issues that RFK Jr. represents, he wouldn't have this this large faction behind him. But it is clear, I think, that there are a lot of conservatives who are interested in him. A lot of independents, a lot of disaffected people, people who are dissatisfied with both major parties, and he has a very interesting coalition. He's probably winning votes for people who are not going to vote for either of the other two anyway.
So a Quinnipiac poll that was released a week ago showed that, and again in this matchup, Biden is narrowly ahead of Trump by 1 point. This was a week ago, within the margin of error in a head-to-head matchup. If Kennedy was not involved. If Kennedy were involved in a three-way race, Biden is ahead with 39% to 36%. Right. So he increases his margin over Donald Trump. That is, I think, why we've seen this big turn of events. That puts the Lincoln Project in a weird situation because they are arguing against people like RFK Jr., even though by some indication he would actually help them in their goal of defeating Donald Trump. But I think the real takeaway is that nobody really knows, and they would prefer a world where RFK Jr. is not continuing to be ascendant. And not just Robert F. Kennedy Jr., by the way, is in the mix as an independent. Cornel West has now left the Green Party, and it's worth looking a little bit at what's going on with these other candidates. Now, independent candidate Cornel West took a jab at Biden for his low standing in the polls, posting on X, formerly Twitter, quote, POTUS doesn't need me to spoil his re-election bid. His milquetoast neoliberal agenda leading us to war, climate calamity, and more poverty is doing that for him. It's time.
They've been saying that Biden's going to put us into a new war forever. Since before he was elected. Where's the new war? If we get pulled into a war, do you think it's going to be because of aggressive actions on Biden's part? Or do you think that it's going to be because of, I don't know, one of our allies getting explicitly attacked, or because of one of the red lines that they put down that I think everyone would agree with being crossed would be reason for us to put boots on the ground? Namely, like, let's say a nuclear strike on Ukraine, or someone entering the war versus Israel and invading them from either the north or from the east. Like, I feel like most people would be like, okay, I mean, we're kind of obligated to. We have we have an obligation to do this, right? And we like Israel, or we don't like nuclear weapons being shot, so that's what we're going to do. Other than that, is there anything else that Biden's done that has been like an aggressive action towards another country that would lead to war?
Time to break the derelict duopoly into tiny little pieces and engender a new U.S. polity rooted in truth, justice, and love.
The mainstream media also appeared to parrot the White House Karine Jean-Pierre's comments, writing off the Biden's poll numbers. MSNBC contributor Dr. Jason Johnson took to X, writing, quote, the recent New York Times Siena poll, only bad news for Biden if the presidential election were tomorrow, but it's not, so he's fine.
We're seeing a lot of that, and I can't imagine a more open expression of indifference to voters' frustration than saying they'll be over in a year. But that's what the Democratic Party has been doing for years now, is treat every criticism as just a political matter, nothing substantive, nothing that needs to be changed, nothing that needs to be addressed. The Democratic Party says the party doesn't need to change, the candidates don't need to change, the polity needs to change. They couldn't possibly know what they want.
That's what you say when you can't change, or you won't change, when you're unwilling to change.
You're unwilling to change. And for what it's worth, what you've seen on the Republican side of the aisle is that the insurgent Tea Party, Freedom Caucus, whatever you want to call them, faction of the party, has had the effect of dragging the party to the right. And it's interesting to look at how they've affected the House differently than the Senate. You see, because of the existence of that faction in the House, there is a real appetite for voting down Joe Biden's funding efforts for Ukraine and Israel in a way that you do not see among Republican senators. So you have a real world example of what it would mean for there to be an insurgent left, for there to be a Democratic Party that for one reason or another was forced to actually say, hey, this is where the electorate is, let's move to them. But that hasn't been the case.
The Republican Freedom Caucus, the fucking Chaos Caucus, These people have been an embarrassment for the Republican Party. They had 2 speakers of the House in 1 year, and they couldn't even agree on who that speaker was going to be both times. They can't agree on anything. They're not getting anything done. They're achieving their goals of not getting anything done, but they're not getting anything done because that's their whole goal. They want to stop the government from functioning.
And I think that the reason is because both parties are captured by the same financial interest and drive in the same direction, especially on these big issues like war.
We'll have more Rising right after this.
All right, guys. Well, it's been fun. All right. I love you guys very much. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. All right. If you haven't followed on Kick yet, please follow on Kick. It is time for me to very quickly get dressed and go to work. All right. But I will catch you guys tomorrow. All right. I love you guys very much. And I will see you guys then.